right? So you'll find that all the test cases are passing, and you didn't write that particular for loop. What happened? You are able to simply reuse this logic that is written simply by calling the add function with the apply method and passing the array as an argument list. Any questions? Good. Okay. Now I said this problem can be solved in 8 lines of code. Right? This problem can be solved in 8 lines of code. But still we have a lot more to do. What is it? Look at this logic. This iteration logic. Right? Now you don't need to iterate. You can use another simple technique to do this, to solve this particular problem. What is it? Watch this. If you have a sum function, and if you invoke the function using sum of 10, 20, 30, 40, can I rewrite this as 10 plus sum of 20, 30, 40, which can be written as 20 plus sum of 30, 40, which can be written as 30 plus sum of 40, which can simply return 40. Possible? Right? You are taking advantage of recursion here. So instead of iteration, instead of a for loop, you are taking advantage of recursion here, and you add one after another. So you use, I'm sorry, this is 40. So you use the stack as your intermediate variable, right? The stack maintains 10 first, and then you add 20 to it, and then you add 30 to it, and then you add 40 to it. Now all these values are added finally to give you the result. Right? Now I want to apply this technique to our calculator. So instead of keep adding our own item, instead of aggregating using the loop, I want to aggregate using recursion. Right? I want to aggregate using recursion. What are the things I need? So if you look at it, right, I need a way by which I can get the first value from the argument list. Is it possible for me to get? Yes. Arguments of 0 will give me the first value. But I also need to get the remaining values from the argument list. Right? I also need to get the remaining values from the argument list. So how can I get all but the first one from the argument list? Now in JavaScript, there is a simple function that is available that can help you with this. Let us take this. For example, if you say numbers equal to 10, 20, 30, 40, you have a method called slice. You have a method called slice. So using the slice method, you can get a partial contents from the array. For example, I can say 0, 1, which means give me the first one. If I say 0, 2, from 0 give me 2 elements. I can also say numbers.slice of 1, 1, which is empty. Right? Now I can also say 1, 2 will give you only 20. Now I can also say slice of 1 will give you everything from the first one. Right? Slice of 1 will give you every value from the first one. So what we can do now? We can use this logic to write this. How? I will say instead of this, I will write it as where first is equal to arguments of 0, and then comma rest is equal to arguments dot slice of 1, and then return arguments dot length is less than or equal to 1. If it is less than or equal to 1, then return parsarg of arguments of 0. Otherwise, parsarg of which is first, right? So arguments of 0 is your first. So parsarg of first plus add of rest. Make sense? Right? So this condition, right, whatever you have written here, right, this condition is this last, this one. If the arguments is only 1 or less than 1, return the first one. Otherwise, right, the remaining is arguments of 0 plus the add of the remaining values. That is what we have done here. Parsarg of first, and then otherwise parsarg of first plus add of the rest. Now let us see if this helps. Now call this, go back here, see it is failing already. Reload this, almost everything is failing, and you get an error. What is error? Arguments.slice is not a function. Arguments.slice is not a function. Now just now we tried and it worked perfectly fine, and now it says arguments.slice is not a function. Why so? Why so? Now yesterday when we discussed about the arguments object, I would have told that arguments is an array like object but not the array. Right? Arguments is an array like object but not the array. Now what makes the difference? Let us look at it. So let me create a simple function, and here I will say console.dar of arguments. I'll also say console.dar of an array 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay. Now let us invoke with 10, 20, 30, 40. Basically, I want to create an arguments object and an array object with the same values and then see what makes the difference. Right? I want to create the arguments object and the array object and with the same values and then see what makes the difference. Now let me run this. You see here, the first one is of type arguments, the second one is of type array. At the outset, both the arguments and array look the same. So in the arguments also you have indexer, array also has an indexer, arguments also has a length, array also has a length attribute. So, right? So the public interface of both the objects more or less look the same, but there ends the similarity. Where is the slice method coming from? I remember the discussion about pro underscore underscore proto underscore underscore. So every array object inherits from a base object, and that object has all these methods. And this is the method that you are using. And these methods are available only to the object of type array. But if you look at the arguments, if you further expand underscore underscore proto underscore underscore, you won't find those methods available here. So that is why the arguments.slice gave an error. Right? That is why the arguments.slice gave an error. Now what is the solution? Solution number 1 is attempt to convert the arguments into an array. Right? Solution number 1 is attempt to convert the arguments into an array. Remember, when you are coming from Java or C# background, your most likely thought process is type conversion. Okay, your most likely thought process is type conversion. In JavaScript, type conversion is not necessary. Okay, type conversion is not necessary. How so? Now, most loosely typed dynamic languages support a specific technique of programming called duck typing. Okay, support a specific type of writing application called duck typing. So what is duck typing? Duck typing says that if you have an object that walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then you can treat it as a duck even though it is not a duck. Read that sentence and see if you are able to understand. If you have an object that walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, you can treat it as a duck even though it is not a duck. The object need not be a duck, but I can treat it as a duck if it exhibits the behaviors of a duck. Is that clear? There's a another very powerful concept. You will find it being used in a lot of places in JavaScript applications. One real-time example for this could be right in here. I'm assuming that everyone is from India. So in here, usually there is a month where you are not supposed to eat non-veg. Right? So for a whole month you don't eat non-veg. But a friend of mine, right, for him, he has to have non-veg on his table every day. Now, how do you solve his problem during a month wherein they can't cook non-veg at home? So typically what my friend's mom does is she uses the meal maker, the soya meal maker. If you look at the meal maker, mock chicken, exactly, right? So the meal maker is, you can cook it like chicken, and when you eat it, it tastes like chicken, but it is not a chicken. You can cook it like chicken and it tastes like chicken, but it is not a chicken. It has the characteristics of a chicken, but it is not the actual chicken. Yes or no? Right? Now, this is a very, very, very beautiful idea. This is a very, very beautiful idea, and it is possible only in a loosely typed language where the concepts of types are not enforced. You can use an object for its behavior, but not for the type. You can use the object for the behavior, not for the type. Okay, so now how am I going to apply this in this application? Guys, just give me a second. I'm just going to switch over to another internet connection. Just give me a second. Okay, now let me show you a simple example. Now let me create an object and look at the structure of the object. The object has one attribute called 0. Can the attribute names be numbers? Of course they can be numbers, right? They can very well be numbers. So you can say where emp equal to an object. You can say emp dot name equal to Magesh. You can also say emp of 0 equal to something. Right, sorry, something has to be within a string. You can also say emp of 0 equal to something. So now if you look at the object, it has two members. One whose name is 0, the other one whose name is name. The numbers can be attributes, right? Attributes can be numbers. But the only thing is, when you try to access those attributes, you cannot use the dot notation. You cannot say emp dot 0. But you can always say emp of 0. That will give you the value. Is that clear? Okay. So now the object's attribute names can be numbers. The object's attribute names can be numbers. So what I will do, I will create something like this, where obj equal to an object, right? It has a few attributes. 0 is 10, 1 is 20, 2 is 30, 3 is 40, and length is 4. Is it an array? Is it an array? It is not an array. It is definitely not an array. But if I don't show you this, but instead if I show you only this, for where I equal to 0, I less than obj.length I plus plus, you say console.log obj of I. If I only show you this code, you are most likely to think that the object is an array, but actually it is not an array. So why do you think that object is an array? Because it is used like an array. Are you with me? Do you understand? Right? Now, you know what? Here is the beauty. Watch this. Watch this. I want, so if you take an array, right? If you simply take an object, here is the object. Now, you know what I can do? Take an array, get access to the slice method, and since the object exhibits the same public interface as that of the array, take the slice method, and if you directly invoke it, the method will operate on this particular array object. The method will operate on this object, but I don't want that. So what I will do, I will say array.slice.call, pass the object as per this context and pass 1 as an argument. What do you get? So you have made a method that belongs to the array operate on an object that is not an array, but it shared the same public interface as that of the array. It shared the same public interface as that of the array. So the object does not belong to the array type. It is not an array. But because it exhibited the same characteristics as that of an array, you are able to apply the slice method on that particular object. Are you with me? Guys, do you understand? Any questions? If you are coming from Java and C#, this will be a little difficult to digest. Any questions? Right? Good. Now, if I can do this on my object, nothing stops me from doing this on the arguments object. Nothing stops me from doing this on the arguments object. So what I can do, instead of calling arguments.slice of 1, I will say array.slice.call arguments, 1. Now will this work? Definitely it works, right? See, all the test cases are passing. Now inline this, that's all. So all you have to do is inline this. So the first is this, and this is also this, and the rest is array.slice.call arguments of this. Now you break it to delete all these extra lines, and here you find that you have the function written in just 7 lines of or 8 lines of code, right? So all you have is your function written in 8 lines of code that solves that can satisfy all your test cases. Does it make sense? Right? So that is why I like this example very much. It is a simple example, but you can discuss a lot of concepts. You can discuss about loosely typed nature of the language. You can discuss about the dynamic nature of the language. You can discuss about duck typing, right? So you can discuss about a lot of things in this particular example. Any questions? Good, right? So this concludes our discussion on this. We will discuss about the other two function invocation patterns a bit later. But for now, this example gets over. I am just checking in the code. Have a look at it and tell me if you have any questions. I'm going to give you 10 minutes time. The code is checked in. Take a few minutes, go through it, and let me know if you have any questions. Right. Let's continue. The next topic of our discussion is closures. So before we proceed, right? What is closure? Closure is nothing but a scope. The way you have a private scope, the way you have a global scope, a closure is also another scope. Now, why are closures important? The reason why closures are important is in JavaScript by default anything and everything is public, right? By default everything is public. So if you want to have something private, if you want to maintain a private state, right? The only way by which you do it is with the help of closures. The only way by which you do it with the help of closures. So how do you use it? How do you create it? So the what I will do, I'm going to show you a simple example, and with that example, let us move on. Let me demonstrate the closures part. Now, let us create a new folder, and this is page 2, and create a new file. I am going to write a simple HTML page where the HTML page is going to contain a button and a div, and every time the button is clicked, I want to display the number of times the button is clicked. So let me name the file as clicktracker.html. Usually I give this as an assignment, but since you are sitting remote, let me solve it myself. So click tracker, and I am going to have a button hash button track value equal to track, and a div hash div message. So this is where I want to display the message. Now what I want to do is, as I said earlier, every time I click the button, I want to display the number of times the button is clicked here, right? So usually what you intend to do, usually what you will do is, most of the time, so I'll say where count equal to 0, and then function button track click. So here we'll say plus plus count, and then document dot get element by id of div message dot inner HTML equal to count, right? And then you would say on click equal to button track click, right? On click equal to button track click. So now stop this, run this. Now you click the button, right? It works just fine. It works perfectly fine. Do you write code like this? Do you write code like this? You should never ever write code like this. This is 10 years old way of doing things. Okay, so you should never write on click in the HTML. You should never ever write on click in the HTML. Why? Because I can influence the behavior of the application from outside. How? From here I can say document dot get element by id of button track dot click on click is equal to null. Document dot get element by id of button track dot on click equal to null. I am able to override the behavior from here. Now when you click the button, you see nothing happens, right? So then how do you solve this? So you should never ever write something like this. Then how do you do that? You do it using code. So you say document dot get element by id of button track dot add event listener of click comma button track click. But this will give you an error. This will give you an error. Add event listener of null. Cannot read property add event listener of null. Why? Because when this line of code is executed, the document is not loaded. So you need to execute this code only when the document is loaded. So you say document dot window dot add event listener of DOM content loaded, comma init. Window dot add event listener DOM content loaded of init. Now go back, reload this. Now you check this is working good. We have written it better, but still there are a lot of challenges. What is it? From the console, I can say count equal to 10,000, and now click the button. It says 10,001, 10,002, 10,003. What is the purpose of the application? The purpose of the application is to track the number of times the button is clicked. But you know what I can do? I can increment the value without clicking the button. I can say button track click, button track click, button track click, button track click. You see, 17, 18, 19, 20. So without even clicking the button, I can increment the counter. I can simulate the button click, right? So now if you look at it, the whole application is open for hacking, right? So from outside, from as a user, just from the console, I can influence how your application behaves, or I can influence what should be the outcome of your application, which is not a good idea, which is not the right way of doing things. Why? The reason is, why is this problem exists in the first place? The reason why the problem exists is everything that you have written here inside the script block is public. Whatever you write in your script block is by default public. Whatever you write in your script block is by default public. Now, I want to hide them. So how can I hide them? In JavaScript, right, there is a simple thumb rule. What is it? If you want to hide something, wrap them inside a function. If you want to hide something, wrap them inside a function. Why? Because in JavaScript, functions define scope, right? Blocks doesn't define scope. That is, only functions define scope. This is as of ECMAScript 5. But the next version of JavaScript, ECMAScript 6, has both block level scoping and as well as function level scoping. Let me see if we can cover some of the ECMAScript 6 features on the last day, if time permits, right? But at least in ECMAScript 5, functions define scope. So if you want to hide anything, wrap them inside a function. That's all, as simple as that. Now what I want to do now, what is that I want to hide? I want to hide everything. What is it that I want to hide? I want to hide everything. So how can I hide it? Very simple. Wrap the whole stuff inside a function. So I'll say function myapp and invoke myapp. Invoke myapp. Now save this. Go back. Reload the page. Reload the page. Click it. It is working perfectly fine. But now come here. Try to access the count. It says count is not defined. Try to access button track click. It says button track click is not defined. Why? Because all these things are wrapped inside the myapp function and you have invoked the myapp function. But then, right, you may ask me this question. What is it? Now count may not be accessible, button track click may not be accessible, but myapp is accessible. Right? Myapp is accessible. As such, the user cannot do anything with myapp, but still, I don't want myapp to be accessible from outside, right? But still, I don't want myapp to be accessible from outside. So, what is the solution? What is the solution? Right? Now, in JavaScript, you can create and execute a function in one shot. How? Look at this. Let me say I have a function. I say console.log fn is invoked. Yes, exactly. Right? So I can say fn is invoked. Now, if I hit enter and then call fn, I am creating the function and then invoking the function, and both these happen in two different steps. But instead of doing this in two different steps, I can achieve it in one step. How? I can wrap the whole function in a bracket and invoke it. Right? I can wrap the whole function inside a bracket and invoke it. Now I was able to create the function and as well as invoke it. Similarly, okay, so what if I want to pass an argument? What if I want to pass an argument? You can also do that. How? Look at this. So function add x and y and return x plus y and pass 100 comma 200. Pass 100 comma 200. You get 300. So I can pass arguments to these functions as well. Okay, very good. What is the speciality? The speciality is not only these functions are created and invoked, they are also destroyed right after invocation. Why? Because their scope ends within this particular block. So if you look at fn won't be available anymore. Add won't be available anymore either. Right? So these are called as immediately invoked function expressions. Is that clear? These are called as immediately invoked function expressions. IIFE. So you create a function, you invoke it, and then the function is destroyed right after. And because these functions are immediately created, invoked, and immediately destroyed, usually you don't name these functions. What is the point in naming a function if the function is not going to be available to be invoked at a later point of time? Right? So nothing wrong, there is no harm in naming these functions, but usually you will find that these functions are anonymous functions. Right? Now let's go back here. We will follow the same approach. Let me remove the invocation, invoke it right here. Is it clear? Invoke it right here. If you want to give a name, doesn't matter. But let us make it as an anonymous function. Now save this, go back, reload the page, click this. It's working perfectly fine. Now go here, count not accessible, button track click not accessible, my app not accessible. Nothing is accessible. Okay. Can I say count equal to 10,000? By all means you can do it. But this will not influence your application. This is another variable with a value 10,000. This has got no relationship with what is the value that you are tracking here. Does it make sense? Others, are you okay? Okay, Santosh, you joined today. Today is it? Yesterday I don't remember you were there.
Yesterday also I joined after 10 minutes.
Oh, is it? Okay, okay. No issues. Right. So now it works perfectly fine. We solved our problem, but there is one question to be answered. What is it? This is the question. Assume that you have a function and you have a variable inside the function. You invoke the function. What happens to the variable after invoking? You have a function, you have a variable inside the function, and you invoke the function. What happens to the variable after the function is invoked? What happens to the variable after the function is invoked? Typically, the variable is destroyed. Right? So once the function is invoked, the variable is destroyed. Right? Now let us look at this code. You have a function in line number 7. You have a function. Line number 8, you have a variable defined in the function, and in line number 17 you are invoking that particular function. The function that has the variable, you are invoking that particular function. So what should effectively happen? The variable should be destroyed, isn't it? What should effectively happen? The variable should be destroyed. But what is actually happening? The variable is retained. You are able to increment the value. The variable is retained. How so? How so? Right? So basically what you have done is you have created a closure on this variable. You have created a closure on this variable. Thereby you have increased the lifetime of this variable. Thereby you have increased the lifetime of this variable. Okay, so now let me explain you how this is done. Now let me show you this. You have created a closure. So how does a closure get created? So let me explain this. Now a closure is typically created in 5 steps. A closure is typically created in 5 steps. What are they? Step number 1, you have an outer function. Step number 1, you have an outer function. So this is an outer function. This is step number 1. Step number 2, you have a variable in the outer function. So when I say variable, I am being too literal here. I am being too literal here. It can be a function, it can be an object, it can be anything. Is that clear? So this is step number 2, a variable in the outer function. Now, okay, so this is step number 2. Step number 3 is an inner function. Step number 3 is an inner function. So a closure is always created by sandwiching one function inside another function. Right? It is always created by sandwiching one function inside another function. So this is an inner function. So let me type this. So this is an inner function. And what is this? This is step number 3. This is step number 3. So this is your step 3. So what are the steps? An outer function, a variable in the outer function, and an inner function. Step number 4 is the variable in the outer function is referred and used in the inner function. The variable in the outer function is referred and used in the inner function. So this is in the outer function, but you use it in the inner function. The variable is declared in the outer function, but you use it in the inner function. So this is step number 4. This is step number 4. Okay, the variable in the outer function is referred and used in the inner function. Step number 5 is the most important step. What is it? By one way or the other, you extend the lifetime of the inner function beyond the lifetime of the outer function. By one way or the other, you extend the lifetime of the inner function beyond the lifetime of the outer function. Right? How do you do it? That is where the trick lies, but I'll explain you later. Okay? So this is your step number 5. You extend the lifetime of the inner function beyond the lifetime of the outer function. You extend the lifetime of the inner function beyond the lifetime of the outer function. When you do this, you are not only extending the lifetime of the inner function, you are also extending the lifetime of the variable along with it. You are not only extending the lifetime of the inner function, you are also extending the lifetime of the variable along with it. Is that clear? So this is what you call as a closure. So a closure is a scope that the inner function did not create, but it controls. Who created it? The outer function created it. So the outer function creates it, the inner function controls it, and that is called as the closure. The beauty is now this variable is accessible only in the inner function. No one else has access to the variable, and thereby the variable more or less behaves like a private variable to that particular function. The variable more or less behaves like a private variable to that particular function, right? So let me repeat those steps. Step 1, an outer function. Step 2, a variable in the outer function. Step 3, an inner function. Step 4, the variable in the outer function is referred and used in the inner function. And step 5, the most important but most vague step is you extend the lifetime of the inner function beyond the lifetime of the outer function, which means even when the outer function dies, you do something so that the inner function lives, and when that happens, you not only extend the lifetime of the inner function, you are also extending the lifetime of the variable along with it, and thereby creating a closure on this particular variable. So what is a closure? It is just a scope. So how is it different from others? The closure has two steps to it. One, creation done by the outer function, and the other one, controlling done by the inner function. The outer function creates it and the inner function controls it, right? And thereby the variable more or less behaves like a private variable to the inner function. Now if you apply these steps one after another to the code that we have created, this is step number 1, an outer function. Step number 2, the variable in the outer function. Step number 4 is this. You see, the variable in the outer function is used in the inner function. So what is step number 3? Your button track click is your step number 3. So this is step number 1, this is step number 2, this is step number 3, this is step number 4, right? How are we achieving step number 5? Anyone? Basically, you extend the lifetime of the inner function beyond the lifetime of the outer function. How are we achieving this in this example? By this particular line, right? By this particular line. So basically what you are doing is you have made the inner function a click event handler of the button, and because you have made the inner function a click event handler of the button, even after the outer function is finished executing in line number 17, the inner function has to live, and because the inner function has to live beyond the lifetime of the outer function, the count variable also lives along with it, and thereby you have created a closure on this particular variable, right? And thereby you have created a closure on this particular variable, right? Now let me show you in the page. Let us do the debugging to understand what's happening. Look at this. If we go to the sources tab, open the file. Which file? clicktracker.html. So I have opened the file, and here let me set a breakpoint on line number 10 on plus plus count on button track click. Now let me click the button. Let me do something so that the application breaks at that point of time, right? So that the application breaks at that point of time. Now the application is breaking. Now in the scope window, you see there are three scopes actually. One is local, which is what you create inside this. So in our case, if I simply declare a variable here where dummy is equal to true, I am simply creating a variable here. Now let me reload the page. Click this. Now if you look at local, what is it? Dummy, right? It is undefined because we haven't executed this. So F10. Now dummy is true. So the variable declared inside a function is basically a local scope, and the other one is global scope. So what is global scope? In the browser, window is the global scope. right? In the browser, window is the global scope. So one is local scope, the other one is a global scope. But you also see another scope called the closure. So now when you click closure, you will find the count is as a part of the closure. Why? Because the count variable is not declared in this particular function, but by making the inner function live longer than the outer function, you have created a closure on the count variable, and thereby you have made the count variable behave like a private variable to this particular function. Is it clear? Is this clear? Let me check in the code. In case if you want to have a look at the code, look at it and let me know if you have any questions. The code is checked in. Guys, let me know once you are done. Any questions?
Will increase the lifetime of this count variable. That's what you will mean to say, right? Hello.
Okay, so what are the best scenarios to use closures? Anytime you want to create private scope, anytime you want to hide something, you have to use closures, right? So anytime you want to hide something, anytime you want to create something private, you can do it only with the help of closures. Okay, now let us try a simple assignment, right? So I'm going to give it to you. You give it a shot. Give it a shot. Okay. So now what I want you to do is this. Create an object. Create an object and assign it to a variable spinner. Okay. Remember, whatever you are going to do now, it does not involve HTML page. No HTML, no button click, no div, no inner HTML, nothing. Okay. So no HTML whatsoever. Write the code in the editor, copy and paste it in the console, it should work. The way earlier I created the employee object display method, etc., right? So similarly, you have to do this as well. Okay. So no HTML page, nothing, right? Just a plain simple code. So create an object and assign it a variable spinner, and the object is expected to exhibit the following behavior. What is a behavior? The spinner object, right? So how you create it is you decide. So where spinner equal to something. Okay, so I'm just going to say this. And the object is expected to exhibit the following behavior. What is a behavior? Spinner should have one method called up. When you call that method, right, it should return you 1 the first time. Call it again, it should return you 2. Call it again, it should return you 3. Call it again, it should return you 4. Similarly, you should also have another method called down. Now call this, it should give you now, because since earlier the last value that returned was 4. Now it should return you 3. Call it again, it should return you 2. Call it, it should return you 1. Call it again, it should return you 0. Call it again, it should return you -1. Is that clear? Right? So you need to create an object, assign it a variable spinner. The object should exhibit just two methods. One is up, the other one is down. So up will keep incrementing a value and down will keep decrementing the same value. The most important thing is the variable that you are going to use to track these values should not be visible to the outside world. So from outside, I should not be able to influence this value. From outside, I should not be able to influence this value like I did earlier, right? So I should not be able to say spinner dot count or something equal to 10,000. And then if I say spinner dot up, it should not give me 10,001. No, that should not be allowed, right? So the value should be influenced only by these up to methods. What are they? Up and down. No other way the value should be influenced. Now, how you create the object mimicking this behavior is the question. So let me add this as your spinner assignment. Right? Spinner assignment.text. Check in this code. Done. So I'll give you 10 minutes time, crack this. So it is 10:15 on my laptop. You take 10 minutes, try to crack it. See, closures are very, very important. Guys, don't skip this exercise. Attempt it. Try to crack it. Closures are very, very important in JavaScript. If at all you want to achieve anything meaningful in JavaScript, you cannot do it without closures. Closures is one of the most misunderstood, underutilized, but one of the best features of the language. Okay, so it is very important you understand it better, and most importantly, not only you understand it, you know how to exploit it for your needs. So the code is checked in. This file is also checked in. Take it, crack it. I will touch base with you in another 10 minutes. Any questions on the problem? Is the problem clear to everyone? Ping me a yes or no, please. Hello. Guys, am I audible? Okay, so is there any overhead of using closures? Yes, definitely there are overheads, right? If you don't do a controlled closure, it may lead to memory leaks. Okay, so a closure is a controlled memory leak, if you can say so. We'll discuss about it, don't worry. Right? Good. Now, do you understand the problem, everyone? I don't know why you responded yes here. I am assuming that you understood the problem. Get going, crack it. I'll touch base with you in another 10 minutes. I'm going to put myself on mute. Guys, are you done? Okay, so here is the solution. So let us see how you arrive at the solution, right? So we need a variable. So let me declare it as count. So where count equal to 0, and then I need two functions, one to increment it, the other to decrement it. So function increment, and I will say return plus plus count. And similarly, you write another function, function decrement, and this is return minus minus count. Okay, very good. But now all of these are visible, right? Everything is public. I want only some of them to be made public, some of them to be private. So first what we will do, we will wrap the whole stuff inside a function, right? I will wrap the whole stuff inside a function. Okay, now the problem is everything is private. Everything is private. So I want to make something selectively public. What are the things that you want to make public? This need to remain as it is, but only these two to be made as public. Since I have to return two functions, right? What I can do, I can create an object that has two members, up referring to increment and down referring to decrement. So I am returning this object. So this object resembles a spinner. So write the function as getSpinner. Function getSpinner. Now watch this. So take this, go back here, go to the console and say function getSpinner. Now you say spinner equal to getSpinner. Now you call spinner dot up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Spinner dot down, right? 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, minus 1. But if you say spinner dot count, it will not be visible. Spinner dot count will not be visible. You can say spinner dot count equal to 10,000. Nothing stops you from doing it. But spinner dot up will not be influenced by this particular value, right? It will not be influenced by this particular value. Is that clear? So now if you look at here, this perfectly fits your closure. So this is your outer function. This is the variable in the outer function. These two are inner functions. The variable in the outer function is referred in these two inner functions. And how are we extending the lifetime of the inner functions? By making them as a method of an object and returning that particular object, and thereby you increase the lifetime of these functions, which also in turn increases the lifetime of the count variable, but they act as private. The variable acts as private to these two functions. The variable acts as private to these two functions, right? So that's pretty much about closures, right? There is a name to how you write this. It is called as revealing module pattern. Okay, revealing module pattern. Basically, when you write it, you write everything as private, but when you expose only selective members as public, right? So it is a revealing module pattern. It is a very popular pattern in JavaScript, and obviously, see, you are able to achieve this pattern only with the help of closures, right? So as I said earlier, closures are the fundamental building blocks of the language. So if you want to do anything meaningful in JavaScript, you have to employ closures. So it's very important you understand the concept. Is it clear? Any questions? Guys? Okay, so we'll wind up with this and we will continue. Is there any other scope like protected? No, there is no scope like protected or anything. You have local scope, you have global scope, and you have closure scope. That's all. There is nothing like protected or anything. Okay, good. So let me check in this, go through this, and we'll meet tomorrow with a little more complex example on closures, right? And then we will look at how to create a class like infrastructure in JavaScript, and then we will look at inheritance in JavaScript, and then functional programming techniques in JavaScript. So most likely now we will cover all these topics in the next 2 days, and we will see how best we can do, right? Good. So if you don't have any other questions, we'll wind up for the day. As usual, I will upload the video. I forgot to upload the video, yesterday's video, so I'm sorry. I will upload all the videos today, right? Today before I go to bed, I will upload them and then go to bed, so that you can download it in case if you want it by tomorrow. So I hope the day was useful, and we'll meet again tomorrow. Thank you.